Welcome back to the BPOS podcast. As always, if you are watching on Spotify or YouTube, please subscribe, leave a 5-star review. Same thing on Apple. It really helps the podcast grow. It helps us get the word out. I would appreciate it. If you do leave any comments, I read every single one, and thank you for them. I appreciate it. Today, I got a very special guest with me, Ethan Martell. And Ethan is a Kings Point grad, class of 21. Was also a very close friend of my son Connor, so I'm honored to have him here. He's also a second lieutenant of the United States Marine Corps. Always love, yeah, there you go. Always love having my brothers and sisters in arms in the studio. So Ethan, welcome, man. Thanks for being here.
Absolute honor.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
I appreciate you making the trip.
Of course, wouldn't miss it. So
Good deal. And where did you come from?
I was coming from North Carolina.
That's right.
Camp Lejeune area.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Awesome.
Yep.
What's the weather like there right now?
It's getting cold.
Yeah.
But it's still not too bad. So being from New York, North Carolina is a nice change of pace.
Yeah, man.
Nice, warmer year round. New York just got hit with some snow, so I don't miss the snow, but every once in a while it's nice. So.
Yeah, it always seems nostalgic. I grew up in Philly, and so I remember the first time Rochelle moved to Philadelphia, and I was like, oh, wait till the wintertime, man. It's so awesome, and the snow and everything. That year was like the worst snowstorm that they had in 100 years.
Love that. And
the snowplow came through the apartment complex, and all the snow that they pushed, she was on the side that the snow piled up on top of the cars, and so it took, like a couple hours to dig the car out that first time. She was like, snow sucks.
Yep, going to being from New York and then going to Kings Point, it was always nice showing my brothers and sisters what the snow was like, especially for our buddies like Sean, guys who come up from like Florida. But snow was always nice about one time a year, and then growing up being my dad's little helper, I would have to snow plow, and we were out there for hours.
Did you have to shovel by hand?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
I don't miss those days, man. Yeah. Don't get much snow. Don't get much snow here in Austin.
Like I said, it's about nice once a year.
Yeah.
So hitting the slopes about once, but I definitely prefer the heat.
So what part of New York did you grow up in?
Upstate, Poughkeepsie area.
Okay.
So I say upstate, but truly it's about 2 hours from the city. But it just looks a lot different. Farmlands and mountains.
Yep.
So I don't claim the city. I like going down to the city for a day, hitting the food, getting some pizza.
Yeah.
But otherwise, just coming back up to New York where the green grass grows.
That makes sense, man. So when you went to Kings Point, then you weren't that far from home.
No. So Kings Point growing up definitely wasn't on my radar. I always thought I was gonna go elsewhere. Goal of mine was to go to the Naval Academy.
Right.
It was a goal of mine since I could walk or knew what the Naval Academy was. So luckily I had family that had worked there, had went there, and went to the academy and just saw these men and women. I was like, I really want to do that. I said, hey, that's what I want to be like. That's what that's how I want to carry myself.
Yeah.
So from the start, I said, hey, I knew I wanted to attend a service academy, particularly the Naval Academy. And then luckily had just mentors in my life that just said, hey, you got to have a plan B. So they said, hey, here's Kings Point, offers everything that the Naval Academy does. Apply, see what happens.
Yeah.
See what happens with the Naval Academy. Unfortunately, didn't get into the Naval Academy, but got as a plan and put myself there. But I was happy to go to school in New York.
Yeah.
It was nice to get away from the academy and just go home.
So what was you said you had family that worked there. What was your connection? Like, how did you get introduced to the Naval Academy?
I had an aunt that had worked at the Naval Academy.
Okay.
And I couldn't even tell you how old, but I was young enough we would go down there for holidays, and we spent Easter down there, and we would walked around the yard. And like I said,
cool.
just seeing the mids, and they were these beasts of individuals at such a young age that when I got to go to a graduation, and, we were there on the field, and we jumped down and grabbed a cover, and I kept that cover to this day. I still have it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And inside the cover, it was this $50 in this note that it talked about, hey, I hope you go on to serve your country. And I kept that in my Kings Point cover, and I still have it to this day.
So wait a minute. When they throw their hats in the air, you went down and you picked up one of the hats, and there was a note in the hat?
Yep, a note and $50. So with that note, it had talked about how this guy wanted to be a submarine officer, how he always wanted to serve his country. And I was already hooked before that point, but then that was just like the icing on the cake.
Oh, that's
So
super
I took the
cool.
note and I took the $50 and I kept it in my Kings Point cover, and I still have both of them today. So
That's badass.
unfortunately, we were the COVID time frame, so they do something similar at Kings Point where you're supposed to like throw up your covers and you're supposed to maybe hand it off to younger cousins or whatever. But our Kings Point graduation got a little messed up with COVID. So
Yeah, that happens. I didn't make it to graduation, so I didn't know that tradition. So yeah.
like I
pretty cool.
said, I think I told you the story where when we first got to Kings Point and I was a freshman and looking already bombing classes, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I could do this." Connor had told us the story about, hey, how you had gone to Kings Point and still ultimately became successful. I was like, oh, that could be me too. Because I didn't know if I was going to make it through.
That's funny. Yeah, he was good at giving pep talks, huh?
Yeah, he got us through. He got us through
Cool.
the day, especially the hardest ones.
Okay, so then Kings Point was your plan B, and you ended up going to Kings Point. Did
Yep.
you, when you got there, did you have any idea what track you wanted to take?
I didn't. So definitely kept an open mind. All I knew, I wanted active duty.
Okay.
So pretty much I told myself it was, hey, Kings Point is a boating school. You're going to learn everything. You're going to become an expert on boats and ships and
Right.
everything involved in that degree. And I was like, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice what I necessarily want to do. I probably would have gone to school for some sort of engineering, but I was like, hey, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be active duty, get that commission. So accepted the fact that I was going to learn about boats for 4 years and knew I wanted to be active duty. So didn't know what branch, didn't know. But like I said, I had mentors and family members and friends who were active duty military.
Yep.
And it was like, hey, that person is a great individual. I want to be like them. So I want to do that job. And then, so by the time that commissioning came around and graduation and COVID had messed a lot of things up. I originally was supposed to go into the Army, had a contract, but what ultimately happened was the Army said, hey, we're not able to make this happen at this time. And I graduated and commissioned into the SSO community, the Strategic Sea Lift Officer community. And I was going to go sail. I was going to sail on my merchant license. And I did that for a short period of time. And at 22, 23 years of age, I didn't want to look out a window for 12 hours a day.
Right.
And I still had this itch to do active duty. So ultimately found myself in a Marine officer OSO office and signed on the dotted line and went to OCS in January of 2023.
Good for you, man.
So
what's OCS like?
OCS it's a 10-week boot camp like thing where it's supposed to be a transition for civilians that are coming right out of college or prior enlisted individuals
Right.
to go and get indoctrinated in this the officer community
Okay.
of whatever branch you're going to go into.
Right.
So it's drill instructors, but not at OCS. They're not called drill instructors. They're called sergeant instructors.
Okay.
So sergeant instructors are running around yelling at you, teaching you how to make your bed and fold your underwear and do all those things. So it's a stress factory, and they but it's a pivotal experience in my life for sure. Where one, it got me back disciplined to the military culture that I'd been longing for since I graduated Kings Point.
Yeah.
And then it was also it's meant to build leaders.
Yeah.
So you're gonna go and it's an assessment, and they're gonna try to break you.
Right.
So it's long days. We're gonna go out into the field, and they're gonna hit you with, hey, you need to write an op order and brief it within 5 minutes, and you got to go conduct a operation of some sort, a patrol. So it was a long 10 weeks.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I went through it.
Well, and you already had, going to a federal service academy when
Mhm.
you show up as a freshman or
Mhm.
plebe. I mean, you kind of go through technically some sort of boot camp.
Definitely.
So you had experience in that. You were ready.
Yeah.
man.
So I knew the game of it.
Yeah.
And that's what got a lot of people. So what makes like boot camp and OCS is different is like you can quit OCS, you can get kicked out of OCS. So I know within my class we started with 60 and ended with like 40. So we had 20 guys who didn't make it through the process.
Wow.
So I had knew the game of it. Like
Yeah.
I knew that we didn't necessarily mess up, or someone wasn't, not that they weren't yelling. There was just extra time before we had to go to chow and I knew the drill aspect of it. I knew I had the military I had the knowledge to go into it
Yeah.
and be successful.
Yeah, you had the experience. And where was OCS? What
This is in Quantico,
Quantico, okay.
Virginia.
Yeah,
Browns
cool.
Field.
So after OCS,
I got a weekend off and went right to TBS. So it was a marathon year of just continuous training. So
yeah.
OCS for 3 months and then TBS for about 6.5 months.
So what led you down the path of the Marine Corps?
So as I was saying, like I really didn't know what branch I wanted. To be honest, I was actually incredibly intimidated of the Marine Corps.
Right.
I said, damn, I got to run a 3-mile run. Like the 1.5 miles at Kings Point was killing me. Like I was doing, I'm not a runner. I'm not a fast runner by any means. And I was like, to double that? Like, okay, no thanks. So, but I had a grandfather who had passed away when my mom was 16. So I never actually met my true grandfather.
Okay.
But knew that he was a Marine. And they said, hey, a lot of your demeanor is like your grandpa Walter. And I said,
cool.
okay. And ultimately, when I was making the lat transfer from the Navy to the Marine Corps, or it was Navy to whatever branch of service was going to pick me up fastest. Right. And it was, of course, the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps just said, hey, sign this piece of paper and we'll get you going. We'll get you on your way to the
we'll take you
to Officer Candidate School.
Yeah.
So I didn't. Like I got there and I was like, okay, is this right for me? I still had to figure that out.
Yeah.
And it hit me on like a 6-mile run or a 6-mile ruck after being in the field for a couple of days, where I was like, oh, like I'm meant to be a Marine. Like I wanted to emulate all these different people in my life. Like, hey, they do a really cool job. But deep down, like Marine Corps is just in your blood. So, and it hit me like this 6 miles, like, oh, I'm meant to be here. This is
awesome.
My connection to my grandpa, who I'd never met, but knew like I'm meant to be like him. So
that's really cool, man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, one of the things that I want to talk about, and I didn't know this, until I knew who you were, obviously, because you and Connor were good friends. So I'd heard your name,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure we met at one point or another, a parents' weekend or something like that. But I didn't know until, after we lost Connor, that you actually had lost your brother.
Yes.
While you were at Kings Point.
Yeah, it was, it couldn't have come at a worse time.
Yeah.
This was junior year, finished sailing. I just got off a boat that I was on for 6 months. I circumnavigated the world.
Right.
And like an idiot, I didn't finish my sea projects. So I had about a month that I had to cram as much as possible.
In fairness,
Mm-hmm.
not like an idiot. Like 95% of people that go to Kings Point,
Yeah,
you didn't finish your sea project.
When you worked like 12 hours a day, and I was on this ship with a good crew of guys and gals, and we were out there, but I was the youngest on the ship, and my nickname was Youngblood. So I believe became the free labor, because you only get paid so much
Right.
when you're out there, that it was, hey, Youngblood, we need you to pick this thing up or go over there. We need you to chip and paint that. So huge to my like leadership experience and learning that side of the trade.
Absolutely.
But there wasn't much time that I got to do my sea project. So unfortunately came back home and had more work to do.
Yeah.
So this was June of 2020, and I'm cramming away on sea projects and doing all I can. And obviously COVID just was in full effect. And I had saw my brother, and probably 2 weeks prior to him actually passing. And this was June 28th of 2020. Just had a weird feeling in my gut that night, and just knew that like, hey, something's up. Like I couldn't sleep. I remember it pretty vividly. And I remember my mom getting a phone call from my brother's girlfriend at the time, and just the scream that had happened. She came up, and I remember pretty vividly what that night, and it was okay. Like, what's going on? Like, this just absolutely just hit us like a brick wall.
Yeah.
So, my mom's a nurse and my dad's a firefighter, so they handle emergency situations on a pretty regular basis. But obviously, this just hit home.
It's totally different. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Totally different when it's your child. Yeah. So, do you want to talk about how it happened or what?
Yeah, I can, again, I say these things as hopefully bring some light to other people who are dealing with
anything you're comfortable discussing.
Absolutely.
And this is what it's all about. I mean, the more detail you feel comfortable giving, I guarantee you there's somebody out there who it's going to resonate with.
I'm definitely comfortable in speaking about it because the thing that I took away from it was, okay, like, hey, Matt, like, we didn't get the chance to speak, and I didn't learn all the lessons from you while you were here because we didn't get to grow up past your 24th birthday. But I'm going to look at your life and I'm going to analyze the things that you would want me to learn. And some of the things that he struggled with were, hey, he definitely was a big time drinker. He had a hard time. Unfortunately, he had some knee problems that affected his ability to like work out, but he definitely struggled with addiction, and as we probably all do. And his thing was food and alcohol, and he hid it in a way, and he became unhealthy. And we had genetic things going on at the same time that didn't help, but he exacerbated those symptoms. And, his body just couldn't handle the things that he was doing to it. So,
and you said, if I remember right, you said that he had to have knee surgery like when he was young.
Yeah, it was from an incredibly young age. So we loved playing. We were outside the majority of the time.
Yeah.
But any time he went out and let's say we were playing baseball and he slid and his knees would dislocate. So, and this was both knees. So I remember by the time he like went from middle school to high school, he had 2 major knee surgeries.
Wow.
But his thing was music. He was by far the greatest musician I've met to date or have been able to hear to date. He could pick up an instrument and probably master it within a day.
Wow.
And he became a music teacher. He went to SUNY Potsdam, an incredible music school.
Okay.
And he played every instrument, primarily the trumpet. And he went on to be a music teacher. So
very cool.
Mm-hmm. So he had music in his life.
Yeah.
As he loved baseball, loved sports, but music was his passion. So
got it.
Music and food. That's why he he could put down some food.
Okay. And so so he was a little bit unhealthy because he ate,
Yes.
couldn't exercise, so overweight. If I remember right, I think you said that there's something genetic that runs in your family.
There was a genetic aspect to it. That we were keenly aware of. Like my grandfather had passed away from it, and then my uncle, my mom's brother, had also passed away from it. So we were keenly aware, and we were going through the necessary steps of getting our hearts checked. So luckily, my sister and myself, we get checked on a regular basis, and we're good across the board. But he had signs of it. But as I said, he definitely made things worse by some of these bad habits that he had.
Gotcha. So ultimately, I guess the end result was, basically like a heart attack, for lack of a better term.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was in our heads, we had him, or my parents had made him go see a doctor beforehand. And in our heads, we're like, hey, we just need him to have a scare. We need him to be like, oh, shit, I need to get my life together.
Right.
Like, I need to get healthy. And it just didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
So that scare didn't come. Which is unfortunate. So my advice to anybody is get out there and get healthy as quickly as possible. So
that's not bad advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a junior at Kings Point, and you get this phone call that your brother passed.
Yep. So luckily I was home at the time.
Oh, you were home.
So
okay.
I was home. So
Gotcha.
I just got off the ship. I think I was home maybe a week or 2.
Wow.
So got home, was staring down the barrel of a million C projects that I had to finish. This happened, and I didn't even know where to start.
Yeah.
How can I continue? How can I get these C projects done? How can I go back to my senior year? But at the same time, I knew that I couldn't put my life at hold.
Yeah.
I was meant to go to Kings Point, and that's a beast of a school. And to stop now, I probably wouldn't have gone back if I was to stop. So
yeah.
To handle both Kings Point and everything that came with it, and then this tragedy, it was tough. It was not fun. So,
yeah. I mean, talk about what. Yeah, I just can't. That's a tough one, man. I mean, because I do understand how academically demanding Kings Point is. I mean, what I don't like what did you go through? How did you push through that, man?
So I was incredibly fortunate that as soon as I got to Kings Point, I met Connor.
Yeah.
I met Sean. I met Chris. And I just surrounded myself with probably the best dudes I've ever met or will ever meet. And we are still to this date like the best of friends.
Yeah.
And we're going to be in each other's lives forever. So we had made it through 3 years at Kings Point so far. And we kind of fell in love with a lot of the big social media guys that have come out there, guys like Jocko Willink and guys like Tim Kennedy. But what makes them so great is that they ask young men and women to be responsible and grow up and try to teach leadership. So we fell in love with these guys, and we were avid. We like to study leadership and these things of like, hey, you know what, you're going to go through hard times. So I say this all humbly. I definitely took a lot from these podcasts that I listened to. It kind of, as you have said, you immediately went to podcasts, and I was recalling podcasts. So one of the podcasts I had listened to was a Jocko podcast with Jordan Peterson. And Jordan Peterson is obviously a crazy intelligent dude. And just one of the things he had talked about was being the most reliable person at your father's funeral.
Yeah.
And yes, it wasn't my father, but it was my brother. And
Right.
I knew at that point in time, I said, okay, this is for me. I need to be here for my family. I want to be the most reliable person here. I want to be the person that, hey, this needs to get done. Like, this arrangement needs to happen. Like, okay, I'm gonna allow my parents to be there for one another. I'll be there for them, but I'm gonna handle everything that I need to for this family so that we can start this healing process as quickly as possible.
Man,
So
that's a tall task for a 21-year-old.
yeah, but I knew that's what my brother would want.
Yeah.
I knew that I didn't want to look internally at that time. I knew that my therapy would be helping them. But I also knew right from the jump. So Marine Corps teaches one thing is that words have meaning. So I looked at this as a situation that we're never going to get over it. To get over it insinuates that you're just going to forget about it.
Right.
But you had to get through it. You have to get through it.
Absolutely.
You cannot just sit there. You can't sit at the 6-foot wall of the obstacle course and not climb up and over it, but you have to get through it. You have to get through the whole thing. So I looked at it and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we as a family are going to get through this. So I knew that that's what had to happen.
Yeah.
We couldn't just wallow in our sorrow.
And you, if I remember right, you have a sister as well, right?
I do.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how did all this affect your sister and your parents? And then your relationship as a family?
So unfortunately, death wasn't a new thing in our family.
Okay.
As I said, my uncle had passed away. My grandpa had passed away. So, and being that my parents are within the healthcare fields, and my dad being a paramedic firefighter and my mom being a NICU nurse, unfortunately, it wasn't a new environment, but just it obviously hit closer to home. So we just came together as a family, and we were surrounded by the best people possible in terms of my dad's job came out and just showed unwavering support.
Yeah.
My mom's coworkers came out and just showed support. But my sister is definitely more a quieter individual. So it was just getting her to talk. Like, hey, what are you feeling? What are the things that you're talking about? And I'm a quiet individual as well in terms of being outwards about my emotions. But it's just, hey, like, let's sit down and let's talk. Like, you're not going to go through this alone. So we came together as a family, and my mom, like, my thing was like, hey, you don't have to say the things that that can be left unsaid. But I thought it was important that she said the things of like, no, we're a family. We're going to go through this. That this is a hard time, but the only way we get through this is together. Like Kings Point. Like, you don't get through Kings Point alone. So we went through that tragedy together.
Yeah. That's good. Well, it's good when it brings a family closer together for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then, all right. So then you talked about these knuckleheads at school.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, Connor, Chris.
Yep.
You have obviously you've got a tight community there because it's a small campus to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, talk about how did that help you? How did having that community and of course your close friends there at school with you, how did that help?
Yeah. So right off the rip, I was able to call these guys, and I said, hey, like, this just happened. Like, I'm going to need you guys. And Connor was actually one of the first people to call me. Called me, sat me down. He said, hey, man, like, I'm so sorry. Like, your brother loved you. We love you. We got your back. So that was incredible to have that support from these guys, especially just because we were just so vulnerable to one another. We know that we were that close that we could be more than just these. We tried to be these hard-bodied individuals that like to work out and do dumb, crazy things. But it was nice that we had as close of a friendship to be able to open up to one another like that.
That's awesome.
So again, Connor was absolutely there for me. Sean was there for me. But at the same time, I was struggling with, hey, I got these C projects. Like, I want to be there for my family.
Yeah.
I was struggling so much at the time that, hey, that was June, and July I had to go back to school.
Right.
Just kick off my senior year. So July comes around, I go back to school, and I just told these guys that, hey, like, I don't want you to treat me any differently. I don't want to be babied. Like, I want to treat, like, nothing's different. Like, I'm the same old Ethan. We can make fun of each other. We can joke. We can laugh. But at the same time, I also recognized later on that I didn't process everything that I needed to.
Sure.
So I can recall a time where, as we do it on a regular basis, we're picking on one another, and I'm sure Sean or whoever somebody called me something.
Okay.
And I took it like so to heart. I was like, you guys don't even know what I'm going through. You don't know this or that. And I would just remember being angry.
Yeah.
And I remember like just being mad at these guys for like a couple of days. And I was like, I don't know if I just need to be alone. But at the same time, detaching myself from the situation, I recognized that I'd processed nothing.
Yeah.
I truly had processed none of it. And I said, okay, I really got to kind of open up now. Like, I was luckily there to be there for my family, but I had not done the healing that I needed to do, just because everything that was going on. So immediately recognized that directly following. I know Christian and Connor and Sean came into my room. I was like, was like, hey, like, you guys don't even recognize the things that I've gone through. But I was like, oh, at the same time, I asked you to treat me normal. And that's a dichotomy that is, I kind of left them with this problem that I couldn't even know how to figure out. I didn't know how I wanted them to treat me. I couldn't tell them, be like, hey, I need you guys to be more sensitive now or be softer now. But also know you can joke and be the same person, be the same guys with me.
Yeah.
So
it's tough, man. It's, I mean, look, I can tell you from my personal experience that stuff like this it changes you.
Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact I'm not the same person I used to be. I'm a different person, and that's just the reality of the situation. But being able to look in anger, I mean, anybody, and I think anybody that's listening, it's okay to understand that anger is a very, very normal emotion in grief. I mean, it just is.
Definitely.
But to your point, man, I mean, you got to push through it, which you did, which is great. Because most people, and I know for myself, I just, at the very beginning, it just did my best to kind of stay busy because I didn't want to go through all those emotions. And that's another one that's just, it's very normal. And when you've got good people around you that understand that, that's huge. That really helps.
Yeah, I was incredibly fortunate that I was forced to stay busy.
Yeah.
But still, the healing process is just going to take time. The more take the time necessary. I knew from the start, but I didn't know how to define it. And kind of when asked to join the podcast, I kind of wrote some notes about like, hey, what are the things that I'm going to say? How can I kind of portray the things that I want people to know? It was like, not necessarily do I want to say, hey, put a timer on sadness, but you can put a time, like this is going to knock you down, but you can't allow it to knock you out. So you can put a timer however long you want it to be, 5 minutes, an hour, a day at most, that you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to allow this to knock me down. Like, be down, be vulnerable, be emotional, and let it run its course.
Yeah.
Because it has to happen. But at the end of that timer, you have to get up.
Right.
You have to get up. And I'm stealing this from another Jocko podcast that he had with Tim Ferriss. It was, hey, get out of your head and get into your body. So luckily at that time, I had already had fitness, already had working out. So I just went to working out. Just anytime I was that timer clicked, and I said, "All right, time to get up and let's go hit a workout."
That's huge. Man, I'm a firm believer that if you don't keep your body sound, it's really hard for you to keep your mind and your emotional
it's definitely
state sound.
Kept me sane to date. So working out has always been a big part of my life. So I'm always wanting military. Being younger, I was just getting on the ground, doing push-ups, and just fitness has always been there for me. So
good. All right. Well, I hope you're ready for tomorrow.
Absolutely. You challenged me.
Okay.
I must crush you.
Perfect. All right. You probably will crush me, but I won't make it easy. I promise that. Dude, I'll tell you what I'm so impressed with. All of the challenges you're facing with school. And look, you can say that you had 12-hour workdays and all, but the bottom line is you procrastinated your
Absolutely.
project.
I'm the master procrastinator. No one can do it better than me.
But you're super far behind on like the most important project that you have to do in order to graduate. You lose your brother. You're going through all these emotions, all this stress, and you're still getting up every day and doing the shit that you need to do to accomplish the mission, man, which is graduate.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, it was a no-fail mission. So Kings Point at the time was also going through COVID, and that was something that, hey, the whole world was trying to navigate.
Yeah.
So Kings Point at the time closed the doors to going home, closed the doors to leaving.
Yeah.
So we were at times legitimately locked in our rooms for a couple weeks. You're only going to go to the bathroom or get meals, and then you got to go back to your room. So yeah, but school in itself was just so busy, and you have to go through a license exam at the end where I pretty much would lock myself in a room and just study for hours a day. And not that it was healthy. No, it probably wasn't healthy, but I knew that it was the purpose and the mission that I needed to accomplish to get on with my life and to reach these goals that I've had for so long of going active duty to serve. So
yeah, that's great. So what do you, as far as pushing through and graduating, with all the outside pressure that you were having, COVID, losing your brother, the falling behind in academics and all, what do you attribute you being able to push through to the end?
That's tough. Again, I'm just surrounded by guys that wouldn't allow me to fail.
Yeah.
I would fail on a small scale, but hey, you're going to fall down, but they picked me up every single time. So it was just being surrounded by the best people.
That's
and
great.
Then, I knew that, as you said, hey, Connor would only want the best for us. So I knew that, hey, my brother would say, get up and get going. Like you cannot put your life on pause. You've worked this hard to get here.
Yeah.
Why stop now?
Man, it's such a powerful statement to think about when you lose somebody, use that loss just like you're saying. What would they want me to do? What would make them proud? Right? It's a smart way to approach it, man.
Yeah, like I said, I kind of, my brother and I, we were close, but he obviously went to school, and he left for school when I was 16. When he was in school, that was about 4 hours away from where I was, and he was right next to the Canadian border. And we weren't the brother sister, like brother that like we weren't giving each other hugs and saying nice things to each other. We were like beating each other up. So but we always knew, like, I can tell you right now that we were always under the impression, like, hey, we're going to grow up together and we're always going to be in each other's lives. It's never, we're not going to be in each other's lives.
Yeah.
But we'll have that close relationship when we're older. Right now, we're just all doing our different things. We picked on one another. We made fun of each other. But I knew in my head. So actually, at the time that he had passed away, he had done something stupid that really, really pissed me off. And we had pretty much had a falling out. like weeks before he had passed away.
Mm.
And we left things on very bad terms. And it's a regret that I have to this day. And as much as I regret it, I still know deep down in my heart the love that we had for one another.
Sure.
So I would tell myself, hey, like we're gonna have this falling out now, but ultimately we're gonna be in each other's lives. He could call me at any time. I'll be there, answer the phone. And I knew that, like, hey, by the time that we grow up, we're gonna be the best of friends, and we'll be that brothers to one another.
Yeah.
That the picture perfect brothers that would help one another and be there for one another. But at the time, we were just too different, running our own lives.
Yeah. You're on different tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No,
we
I get
weren't
that.
necessarily in each other's lives as much as we would have liked to have been.
Mhm.
Like I said, he did something that pissed me off, and I got upset, and I didn't handle the situation appropriately. But I allowed it to like control my emotions, and we left things on bad terms.
Yeah.
And then come to find out, hey, you're going to pass away several weeks later. So to anybody out there, go have those hard conversations early, because
Yeah.
you never know.
You never know. That's very, very true. I mean, how about your parents? How are they doing?
They're good. They're absolutely the strongest people I know.
Okay.
So they've always been selfless service, more so than anybody I know.
Yeah.
They grew up in hard times. I mean, my dad, for example, both of his parents passed away when he was, I don't know, 8 years old. Had to go to an orphanage and was adopted by the people who I now call my grandparents.
Wow.
And he grew up on a dairy farm, and he had a hard life. But he took those things. I mean, he really put meaning to the saying of, like, hard times make hard men make easy times. And he built this life for us, and he afforded, both my parents afforded us and my siblings all the opportunity in the world. And
Yeah.
it was for us to mess up. But they also instilled in us the work ethic necessary and the character to be successful. So when this all came down, obviously they were broken, like just broken individuals. I remember my dad saying, who's being a paramedic, and on a regular basis was the coolest thing in the world, because we'd go out and random people. My dad is also known as the mayor because he knows so many people. People would come up to us and be like, hey, you maybe don't remember me, but you saved my life. Or you had this,
Wow.
you did this thing. You were there for me at this emergency. And I remember my dad saying, like, hey, I don't know how I can get in the back of an ambulance now. And that was hard, like hard hearing him say that, because I knew, like, not that I've been on calls with him, but I knew that he was a calming presence to so many, and so many people
Yeah.
have said that to him. So I said, like, I knew that was how broken they were at the time. But they also have an incredible marriage. They are incredibly religious. They relied on their faith within one another and in God. And they battle with it every single day, but they are still there for one another, and they found what worked for them. So
Are they still working? Is he still a firefighter?
yes. Yep.
Okay.
So as my dad has gotten older, he moved into like a training position for a little while. So he thought his effect could expand to, okay, instead of me just being the one at the emergency scene, let me train others. So he became a lieutenant within the fire department, and my mom still works as a NICU nurse.
Okay.
So
Great. Did you experience, and this was new to me, until we got into the TAPS program and started, talking to other people and going through their grief counseling programs. But did you experience, actually, let me set the stage here. So what I heard one time was at an event, there was a group of kids sitting at a table of siblings. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that was brought up was when that sibling, brother or sister, had passed, people would always come up to them and they would ask them, how are your parents doing? Mm-hmm. Right? But a lot of times they never asked them, how are you doing? Was that your experience? Did you feel like maybe you were left out of that a little bit at any point?
I don't know if I just didn't want people asking how I was.
Yeah.
I wasn't, you kind of say it in the Marine Corps sometimes, hey, you're going to fake it till you make it. Like, you're going to yeah, it's not that I ever felt left out. I don't know if I even wanted people to ask how I was, because I was going to say good. I was going to say good regardless.
Right.
And again, that's not the best answer, but
No, there is no such thing as faking it till you make it with grief. It just waits for you.
Definitely.
No, if you don't face it, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you don't at least try and climb that 6-foot wall over and over and over again until you finally get over it, I mean, it's going to be there, and you're going to be stuck in the exact same spot until you do.
But I also knew, like, I had the right people in my corner.
Yeah.
So I had the Connors and I had the Shawns, that I'm going to be vulnerable to the people that I trusted most.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to spill my guts out to just some random person, or even the relatives that I only see like on holidays. I'm not going to be the one. I didn't want to spill my guts to them, but I went to the people that I trusted most, and knew that, like, the people that I trusted most were going to tell me, like, at the end, hey, you're going to have to get up and you're going to keep on going. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't want to hear, like, it's okay to be down.
So what, you made it through. You
Barely.
Yeah, that's all right. It's a win or loss, right? Those are the two columns. There's no, you were disciplined enough. You had a good support system. And you made it through. And then what happens when you graduate? What did you do?
Yeah. So commissioning directly into active duty military didn't happen.
Okay.
And I kind of just said, okay, like, hey, maybe God has a plan. This is where I'm supposed to be. So found a job sailing on a ship and was going to do my Naval Reserve time. So did my one little stint with the Navy Reserve, did the introduction. And I was sailing on a ship. And as I said, being 22, 23 years old, looking out a window for several hours a day, I said, okay, I could do something more.
Yeah.
Selfishly, hey, I wanted a more fun job, but also, like, I knew I wanted to serve. It was always, my parents had instilled within me selfless service. So as found a recruiter that was willing to work with me, go through the lat transfer process. And I had worked for about a year and a half. And then January went to OCS.
Okay. You know, I think it's worth saying it is super admirable that you wanted to change paths from, sailing and go active duty, because there's a pretty big difference in paychecks between the two.
Absolutely. But you can't pay for the experiences that I've had so far.
Yeah.
At this time, I'm a platoon commander, and I have 30 of the best Marines, and I get to work with them on a day-to-day basis, and it makes everything worth it.
That's awesome.
It's the only job I've ever wanted, and I'm so happy to be a platoon commander. I love these guys. Their problems become my problems, and I treat them like they're my own, and I love these kids. So, money, you can't put money on that.
No, I agree. I remember when Connor came home, and he, I think, had a very similar experience. And I think a lot of people will go through this at Kings Point. The jobs that are out there when you graduate, if you go into the civilian sector, are pay very well.
Yeah, they're pretty lucrative.
Yeah. However, to your point, sometimes you get on a ship and you're like, you know what? I don't think I want to do this for the rest of my life.
Exactly. So the way you sail probably 6 months out of the year, sometimes more. And I was thinking to myself, okay, if I sail for 20 years and I sail 6 months out of the year, am I willing to pretty much give up my life for money for 10 whole years? And it was a no. It was absolutely not. Money comes and money goes. But like I said, the experiences of working with Marines on a regular basis and I've grown so much since I've hit the fleet, became a lieutenant, became a platoon commander, that hopefully that pays it for itself by the time I get out and could use just these experiences elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. When Connor came home and said he wanted to switch gears and go in the Marine Corps, I remember Rochelle and I were like, do you know what the pay scale is in active duty? And he said to us, I don't want to look back 20 years from now and regret that I didn't serve the country on active duty. That was his response. And then it was just like, how do you argue with that?
Absolutely. So Connor had everything going for him. He had the right demeanor, and you guys put into him this character. he's the officers that we need today. He's the people that are supposed to be leading.
Yeah, he was a great leader, man.
As much as he wanted to be a pilot, like I would have loved him seeing him be a platoon commander because he would be an amazing platoon commander.
Yeah.
The change that he could have in these Marines, or within the Marines, because he's a Marine, within these Marines' lives, like he's the type of person we need within the military. So
he told me some stories, and look, he's my son, so I want to preface this by, this isn't just like, hey, my son is great and all this sort of stuff. But I remember him telling me one time, he was a junior officer, and he was walking on base, and a couple enlisted guys didn't salute him or something like that. And instead of taking the power route, like, hey, I'm an officer, you need to salute me, he stopped him and he explained to him, hey, you guys are Marines and you're the best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we do to show each other respect. I mean, like, he just used it as a teaching moment. Anyway, that just reinforces. I would hear stories like that. He would tell stories like that. And it just reinforced to me that, his leadership, I don't know where he got it.
Yeah, Connor held the standard. We were seniors at the academy, and he took on the company executive officer role, and he ran a tight ship. He held the standard. So
that's funny, man.
It was cool. He was such a good leader. So
that's great. I love it. Well, it's it's great seeing you guys move on and do the things you're doing, and we appreciate you obviously staying in touch with us and coming down to honor him with the workout tomorrow. It's going to be great. What's next for you on your agenda?
I guess wherever life takes me. I don't know. So, as for right now, I'm a platoon commander and I'm enjoying that time.
Okay.
I don't want to waste that time away. Whatever the Marine Corps throws at me. Been lucky enough to been put in a position where I can kind of go down any route that I want, military, not military. But yeah, I just kind of where God puts me. I truly don't know.
Awesome.
So I'm not living 5 years in advance. Again, I'll kind of quote something again said in a Jocko podcast with Tim Ferriss. It was like, you can have 2-week goals and 6-month projects. I haven't projected out that far yet. Who knows where the Marine Corps is going to put me? Who knows what's in store for this nation?
Sure.
But I'll take it as it comes.
Yeah, things are looking bright right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've heard you speak about religion, not in great lengths on this podcast, but have listened to the podcast enough that you've mentioned here and there. But faith has always been a big part for myself as well. So,
and your parent, you said earlier that your parents,
my parents
have
were
a lot
religious.
Of faith.
Yeah, they were definitely. We grew up going to church. We were altar servers. That was we had to go to church. We were there to see our grandparents. We were there to go to church.
Right.
But at that time, do you truly accept, like, hey, do you believe in that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior? Are you gonna, we didn't know Connor. I can tell you that I didn't know that Connor was going through these baptism classes, and all I remember him telling me was, "Hey man, do you want to come to my baptism?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll go. I want to go. I'll be there. I'll be there to support." And the biggest thing that I can tell you in terms of, like, I'm okay in terms of handling Connor's death. Connor was an incredibly close friend, and that could knock anybody down.
Yeah.
But I was in that room when Connor, like, spoke the words of, like, "Hey, I accept Jesus Christ in my life."
Yeah.
And he said, like, I want my sins forgiven. He said, "I accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior." And I just know that he's okay. And that's the only way that you get through. And as they say within the Marine Corps, Semper Fidelis is just always faithful.
Yeah.
And that was Connor. So you just got to keep the faith. And Connor had that. And he wasn't one to project that out to others in a boastful manner. But he was saved, and he had Jesus in his heart. So that was monumental in terms of my grief process with Connor. Because Connor, we were that close. We were brothers. We had gone through really, really hard times together.
Sure.
But I knew that when all said and done, that Connor's okay. My brother was religious. Like I said, we grew up as altar servers and doing those things. But he kind of got away from it as he had gone to church and had a more normal college experience.
Right.
I'd like to still think to this day that he did have Jesus on his heart, and he that he's okay, and that he knew who his Lord and Savior was. So,
well, you would think. I mean, with the foundation, your family's foundation, and it's obviously it's impacted you.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think chances are pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So that was something that for anybody that's going through this healing process is try faith. If you haven't, the words they'll get you through. You'll find. I mean, the Bible itself is a teaching manual. It's a kind of like how Jocko has a tactical field manual for leadership. It's the same exact thing. So,
yeah, well put, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Yeah, I'm learning more about faith.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I've said this a bunch of times. Like I'm not a non-believer or an atheist or anything like that. But it's not really front and center in my life, or hasn't been. But for sure, I think there's a lot to it, man. And there's a lot of different ways to define faith as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just going to church every Sunday, or I mean, there's what I'm learning is I guess what I'm trying to say is my outsider's perspective has been, it's like, oh man, these Bible thumpers, geez Louise, that's all they talk about. And the reality is, that's a small percentage of people. Most people are, like you or like Connor. It's that, their faith is a pillar, in their life. But, to your point, that you don't go out there and project and, try and get in people's faces about it or act like you're better than somebody else because of it. So I think that's super important. And I think it's helpful, when people are just there and can talk about it without preaching. I think it helps. It helps people like me who are, trying to figure it out.
You had actually mentioned before, hey, I don't know just how to have that conversation. Like, hey, Lord, what is this or that? Like, that conversation sometimes feels awkward. And I'm definitely in that same boat. And
Yeah.
I'm learning that how to have that conversation to make it less awkward.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I still struggle with. But yeah, just in terms of what I can pass on to anybody is just try faith. If you haven't, try faith. It works.
Not bad advice.
Mm-hmm.
You got a lot of good advice for such a young man.
Yeah. Like I said, these guys, the Jocko Willings and the Tim Kennedys, they've gotten in my head, but luckily they're good role models. So
good. Well, hopefully you'll be able to meet Tim in person tomorrow.
Yeah, I really would like to. That would be pretty.
Yeah, that'll be
cool.
great.
But,
yeah, be ready. You can try and beat him if you want, but
we're going for it.
Okay,
we're going for it. We'll do whatever it takes.
That's awesome.
So,
all right. Look, brother, is there anything else that you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I guess the big things, as I kind of was writing down notes, the things that I try to do on a regular basis now, just to kind of keep Connor, Matthew, their memories alive.
Mm-hmm.
The big things that I try to do are, hey, speak of them in the. We're not talking about them in the past tense.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is the standards of the time that they passed away to now haven't changed. Probably they've actually gotten worse. So when I speak of them, yes, I can speak of them, yes, in the past tense of like, oh, that time was good, but their character still shines through, and let's give them the credit due for the good that they're still continuing on, this podcast being one of those things. So
So basically what you're saying is use present tense. So instead of he was XYZ,
Yep.
he is
yes,
XYZ.
absolutely.
Okay.
Connor is one of the best people I've ever met. His character is incredible. His effect and influence on this world will never die.
Yeah.
That didn't die with him. His influence and Matthew's influence, if you think about it, where King's Pointers are now is all over the world.
Yeah.
So Connor had that effect and still has the effect on people. So yeah, speak of them in the present tense.
Okay.
They're here. Their effect is because of the things that they've done and the person that they were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but if I can just close out in any sort of way, it's just keep pushing on, Semper Fidelis. So
Awesome. Thanks, Ethan. I appreciate you, man.
of course.
All right.